Representative Ken Gordon, Democrat from Bedford. What do you want me to do? I'm looking in the wrong place. Has served the 21st Middlesex District, the communities of Bedford, Burlington, and the 3rd Precinct of Wilmington since he was first inaugurated in 2013. He currently serves as House Chair of the Joint Committee on Public Service. Representative Gordon studied journalism at Northeastern University and graduated cum laude from Suffolk Law School. In addition to his role in the Massachusetts legislature, Representative Gordon continues to practice as an attorney, representing employees who have suffered discrimination or wrongful termination in small businesses in employment and commercial matters. Ken lives right here in Bedford, up the street from me, with his wonderful wife, Brina, who teaches at Bedford High School and is the best chef I've literally ever met. And their son, Brandon, who's an undergraduate at art school.
Yoshi.
Welcome. Oh, and Yoshi, our favorite dog buddy. How could I forget Yoshi?
Yeah. Yoshi is friends with Don's dogs,
Yes.
Desi and Plato. Okay. Okay. So I'll put this here
Perfect.
and this over here. Good. All right. Welcome. Thank you. And I appreciate you being here and inviting me to address Rotary. I've always enjoyed talking to Rotary because of the mission that you have. Just basically helping people and doing the most good for the most people, which I try to maintain as sort of a motto when I serve in the legislature. Like Don said, I've been serving for 10 years and I am the House Chair now of the Joint Committee on Public Service, which oversees public employee pensions, healthcare, and what's become a little bit of a focus for us this session is civil service employment, which is police and fire primarily, some other prison guards and things like that. But police and fire is what we really think of, state police. And our municipalities and our civil rights groups have been in conversation sometimes getting a little bit animated around the country about the roles of policing and the roles of and the interests of the civil rights group, which is to say, we've seen through the country instances where police and members of the Black and Latino community have had interaction which hasn't gone particularly well. So we're looking into Massachusetts laws and how do we provide access to employment opportunities for people from diverse backgrounds, while at the same time protecting the municipalities' rights to hire in the system that they've had. So we met about 14 times, and we extended our commission for until the end of next session, because I really think that we can't take 10 months to look at a system that's been going on for decades and come out with a report that says, okay, here's your answer. We have some. We've seen, I'll just talk about that in a little bit more broadly about what we're doing. But having gone into that topic, what we've seen is that there are many municipalities that have left civil service because they say it's just too constricting and we don't have access to hire people from diverse backgrounds. Because what happens in civil service, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but what happens is if a police department or a fire department that is in civil service want a new employee, they ask the civil service unit, it's called, to send them a list of candidates. The flip side of that is if you want a job in civil service as police and fire, you take a test, the civil service exam, you get a score, then there are certain preferences that are applied. If you are a veteran, you're given in Massachusetts a preference which would put you, as long as you pass, you would be considered ahead of non-veterans who pass. If you're the child of a police or firefighter who died in the line of duty, you would get a preference to leap above that and things like that. So it starts with the test, and then there are a lot of preferences that end up so that the lists that are given to the police chief or the fire chief is much different than simply who scored the best on this test. So there are municipalities that say, well, when we want a specific need, we can't get that because that name is not on that list. Or if we interview and we don't particularly care for the person, just they didn't interview well, we have to defend why we bypassed, it's called, why we bypassed that candidate. It's not like private employment where we just have the discretion to pick who we want. We say, we'll interview 5 and pick the one we want. In this case, they're given in an order and you've got to go first to last. That's the system. So a lot of municipalities aren't satisfied with that system. Several have left, especially recently. And when they leave, they claim that they're trying to gain access to a more diverse employment population. What we found in our committee, though, is that we looked at, okay, what happened after you left? It's very rare that the department that leaves ends up becoming a more diverse department. And so one thing that we did do immediately was we said that if you want to leave, you've got to at least agree that you're going to follow certain employment practices, which include reaching out toward diversity if you can find it, and then reporting back to us every 2 years with what you've done. There is actually a law now that says that municipalities are supposed to provide that report to the civil service department, civil service unit, but there's not very much enforcement of it. In fact, there's no enforcement of it. Very few do it. So this will give an incentive to those that say, well, we want to leave at this point, right? And then what we're trying to do is make it better. We're just trying to make it better. This and other government programs, what I find interesting about it is there are points that will please some people and displease others. And so almost everything we do involves decisions that are going to not please everybody, because it's all a balance and there are all these levers that you've got to push one way or the other. And so that's what we do. So I know it's summer, in addition to the Red Sox unfortunately losing to the Orioles, because we now have 2 months left until the end of the session. So our session on the even numbered years goes to the end of July by our Constitution. So all the business that we have that requires a vote has to end the end of July. We still have a lot of business that we do, but at that point, anything that we pass has to be unanimous, which is actually the way we do it is we put all the bills out. And if anybody wants to either vote no or say, I want to hold that bill for discussion, that bill can't go forward because we're not there to actually vote on it. So the only things that can go through are the ones we can work out between ourselves without anyone having an objection to it. So backing up to, until then, we still vote. So we have 2 more months. And our focus is going to be on some of the programs that either we already sent through the House and the Senate, and now they have to come together. One of those programs is sports betting that's gotten a lot of attention from the public. The Senate has one version, we have another. They're quite different. So what'll happen there is one of 2 things. Well, one of 3 things. One is nothing. I worked a lot on that sports betting, the House version. I wrote part of it that from last session that was carried into this session. And so I could tell you the 2 differences on that. And I don't know how interested this group is on that one, but I'll pause a moment because. Okay, so well, because when I'm in town and places, that's usually one of the questions I get is, how about sports betting? New Hampshire has it, Connecticut has it, Rhode Island has it. Where are we? And we have the company that is the most successful in sports betting altogether. DraftKings is right here in Copley Square. So how come we can't do it, right? So the differences between the bills are that the House bill allows for college betting. The Senate bill does not. The Senate bill has a higher tax rate than the House bill has. This sounds a little bit defending the House bill, but I can't help it. I helped to write it. But the reason that we have have college betting is that what we're trying to do is bring bettors who are currently betting into a regulated state system, because I don't think the research I've done shows there aren't going to be too many people that don't bet on sports right now that are going to all of a sudden say, well, now that it's legal, I'm suddenly interested in doing this. It's something that takes time and interest. If you want to bet on college sports, if you want to bet on sports right now, and you live in Massachusetts, you can do it. It's just probably not legal. There are apps you can put on your phone right now and bet, and millions of dollars are spent every year on this illegal form of betting. It's very hard, very, very hard to enforce. It's very, very hard to regulate. The banks, I looked into, can we work at access to the banks? And these companies that are offshore just use a different bank or use a different business organization they form to do it. It's very hard. So it exists. And the other thing you can do is go to New Hampshire from Bedford or this area. Go to New Hampshire. It's a 25-minute drive. That's legal. And the statistics show that at least 30% of betting that goes on in New Hampshire and Rhode Island comes from Massachusetts phones, right? We all can track your phones. So they're getting a lot of business from us. The college betting issue is if you want to bet on college sports, you can bet on college sports. You'll do it illegally or you'll do it in another state. The House feels, and I feel that since that is the case, we're not going to protect college students by leaving them out of this program. If we pass a legal program, we'll be able to oversee how betting is going in college sports. And if we see, for example, an inordinate amount of betting being placed in one direction on one program, we can take a look at it because we can see the program in front of us. So that's why we don't think it makes sense to leave that type of betting out. And the tax rate, we think, and personally I think, the only way this succeeds at all is to replicate the tax rate that's going on in these other states. We can't tax higher. We especially can't tax higher than what's going on offshore because it's just money. It's not a product that people are buying. It's exchange of money. So if the tax rate is higher in one place, people are going to choose the lower tax rate. I mean, I think it's just that simple. So I think what's going to happen is either the Senate, I really do think that it's the House version. And again, I just think the House version makes sense. So I think the Senate will, there'll be these negotiations, these trade-offs programs, okay, we want this program our way. You want that program your way. It just happens in organizations. That may be happening eventually. Or they'll just, understand that you can't overtax this program or it becomes useless. And these other arguments, and we'll do that. And as I said, the third thing is if we can't have a meeting of the minds, then what happens in a conference committee is nothing will come out. And things do die every session in conference committee. I hope this isn't one, because it's just money that we can make to fund programs that I'm sure you have questions about. Why can't we fund this, that, or the other thing? And it's that we have a certain amount of money. We don't really have an appetite to raise people's taxes. And so we've got to work within that budget. And so a lot of my progressive friends, and I consider myself to be one, but when someone says, will you support these 10 programs, all of which are expensive, I really think the argument is, what's your priority among these 10? Because we can't, everyone is worthy, but we can't afford everything all the time. So that's why we sometimes have to partially fund something, and the people on the side, on one side will say, well, that's not enough. And we will agree that's not enough. We need better funding of things like dental coverage for children. We really do. There are programs that we don't fund enough. But then we're looking at children who don't have breakfast or lunch. Should children be getting, that can't afford it, should they get at least 2 meals a day in school? And I don't think there are many people that would say no if they can't afford it at home. How can you learn? How can you learn if you're hungry? So these are all the decisions that come across the legislature that we have to, I think, prioritize, as opposed to giving each decision kind of short shrift, isolated. These are good, these are bad. It's not that. It's that how can we help as many people as we possibly can in terms of what we've got to work with. So we've got that coming through. The program that I'm working on that I think will come through, but I can't guarantee it, but I think it's got a lot of momentum, is early childhood education and childcare. I filed a bill together with a representative from Boston, Adrian Madaro, that will give access to affordable preschool education and daycare to most every family in Massachusetts. That bill was used to form what became a bill that was passed about 2 weeks ago from the Education Committee. It takes a lot of what we filed, so I'm excited about that. It's not exactly what we filed. It kind of never is. But the concept being that we will provide greater assistance for families so they can have access to preschool and childcare so that they can get back to work. And it's all targeted to their wages, the state's average weekly wage. So if you're making 85% of the average wage, then you're going to get a lot of assistance. You're going to get assistance, I should say. You'll get assistance to get these, because I think of a lot of programs that we look at, if we can give preschool, if we can get access to preschool for our children, they get a step ahead when they get to public school or any school, elementary school, and they stay ahead all the way through and all the way through college. And so it's a benefit that just stays with them. And it's a tremendous disadvantage to not have that benefit. The other reason that I filed it, and that makes sense for me, is that I think that I was one of the authors and lead sponsors on paid family and medical leave. And my thought is that, statistics and social studies showed that for the first 12 weeks, it's very important for an infant or a newly adopted child to be able to have time with their family. And people shouldn't have to choose between, do I have to go back to work now, or can I spend time with my family? This also applies when a child is in the hospital with a severe illness. I want to be with my child or my husband or my parent, but I can't because I have to pay the rent. That program that we now have will provide substitute wages to people in that situation so they can be with that family member. The problem is after 12 weeks, it goes away. Okay, so now both of the parents want to go to work. They both have a career, but the lower income worker usually doesn't have access to that, because if you're paying tens of thousands of dollars a year for childcare, it makes no sense for a lot of people. And a lot of people are in that situation where they're saying, I'd like to continue, and it's largely women. It's a disparate impact on women. They can't return to the workforce. When they finally can, when their children are in public school, they now have lost, there's a gap in what they can make now because they've been out of the workforce for so long. And that's part of the reason why women make about 80 cents to the dollar to men for doing the same thing. They're further behind in their career. So this just has that ripple effect that I think will address a lot. The other thing it does is, for the providers who participate in this program, we will assist them in paying their the teachers, because they're all tremendously underpaid. And that adds to the problem because there's tremendous turnover, because they'll get teachers, young teachers out of school, they get some experience, they move on to a better paying job. This will help them to do that as well. Help them stay in business, essentially, to help the teachers to make a little more money and help families to pay for it. So those things I've been working on, among others, but I want to take some questions too, because I don't know how long you have me. I don't know how long you want. I'll be here as long as you want me to be. I don't know how long you want me to be here.
Yeah, Ken, I was really sad to hear this morning when the radio went on that Governor Baker vetoed the bill to allow immigrants to have driver's license.
Yeah.
As a person that dealt with immigrants in Bedford, and to see the negative effects it has on any hope of so many things, I just, my heart's saying, is the legislature prepared to override that, or
Yes.
about that?
How about that? Yes.
Good to hear.
So the way that what we do is it's important when we take a vote how many votes we have, and we count before the vote is taken. We know what we are putting up, and this is a vote that we knew we had support from 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate. So if this was going to be vetoed, we know we have the votes to overturn it, because once someone votes for a policy the first time, they're not going to change the second time. So you can count the votes we had the first time. It was more than 105 in the House. It was more than 2/3 of 40 in the Senate. We have the votes, and we'll do it. That's Massachusetts government. So yeah, we'll do that. And I will just speak substantively on that. And the reason that I voted for it and will vote to override it, again, is that we do have a problem in this country with immigration. And the problem is we haven't had substantive immigration reform for quite some time. And the issue, we need people. Our economy is suffering because our access to labor is really, really struggling. We need access to labor. So we need to have a way for people to be able to get into this country legally and help us with a path to citizenship. We need also to have some protection at the border so that we know who's coming in, right? It's a two-way street, but we can do that. We can do both. The federal government is in charge of all that. The state government is not. So we're not in that, essentially. We don't have that responsibility to have that control over immigrants and the status of immigrants in our state. What we can do is make sure that the state is safe. And so what we have found is that people who are here and they don't have access to things like a driver's license, are driving anyway because they've got to get to work. And ironically, when they get to work, for one way or another, they're paid and they pay taxes and they add to the economy. And we're talking about people sometimes who have been here for decades, people who, those of us who live here know these people. And, you know, you'd be surprised to understand how many people are affected by this problem. And it's not just this sort of stereotypical someone who came into this country 2 years ago in a particular situation. In this state, there are a large number of people who just overstayed a student visa, overstayed another kind of a visa, and it's been years. And so we want to keep our roads safe. We want to make sure that people on our roads have access to a license because that gives them access to insurance. And with access to insurance, it's safer. You know, you've got to, I mean, you know why, for all sorts of reasons. So for reasons such as my son is a new driver, some of you have kids who are new drivers. I want them out there in roads that are safe. And if something happens, I want that other driver insured. So I voted for it and we'll vote till right.
Beyond that, it's amazing you think about what you need or why you need a driver's license for everything. I mean, so much online, in person, whatever. I mean, it goes far beyond motor vehicles.
Well, these particular licenses, though, do have some restrictions, which is to say this, that now we are in this situation where we have real ID, and most of you probably have, last time you renewed your license, you got the real ID and had to go through proving that you're born here, you know, you show your birth certificate, you show all sorts of documents, and it was, you know, kind of difficult, kind of a pain for a lot of people. But these real IDs now will get you onto a plane without showing a passport and things like that. So the driver's license that we're talking about don't get you the same benefits as real ID. And specifically, you can't vote because you have a Massachusetts driver's license. People who have a green card right now can't vote, but they have a Massachusetts driver's license. We're used to doing that. And I know the governor said that's his issue, is that he doesn't think the registry is prepared to be able to distinguish in that, but the registry vote, that's part of the administration. That's his administration, and I think they can do it. They do it now for green card people. They can do it. They can just do it. Any other questions? Yep.
So I'm a commissioner on the Upper Middlesex Commission on the Status of Women, and 3 of our priority legislations include your Common Start bill.
Right.
I really appreciate your support and your leadership and providing affordable childcare for women. Well, everybody, which lifts women up.
Right. Thank you for pointing that out.
Their priority legislations are the Protected at Work, which allows for protections for survivors of domestic violence whose work is interrupted by some of the things that they need to do in order to assert their rights, like attending court, or if their abuser is actually bothering them at work, they can't be fired for it. And the third one is our support of being able to use campaign funds for childcare for
Right.
folks who are running for office. And I'm curious if those are bills that you're familiar with and you're supporting. You can kind of give us an update on them. If
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. First of all, I think I've signed on to all 3. Haven't I signed on to the other 2? I think I have. Yeah, I think I have. And I know I talked to the Speaker's office about the second one, which is the protecting people who are victims of domestic abuse at work.
Yeah.
Along with what you said about getting to court, going for medical treatment and all of that. I mean, there is an issue for people, it's largely women, who are victims of abuse, where the employer knows about it and shuns them because it's a problem. They don't want an abuser to come into work and create a scene and things like that. And so this would provide the protection so that a person could take the time that they need to get to a lawyer, to get to court, to get for a medical trip, but also it shouldn't be used against them. I've supported it, and I know personally someone who was a victim of that. They got fired because it was, well, this is going to be a dangerous situation here at this workplace, and we can't have that, and we wish you the best.
Yeah. I had a client who had negative repercussions with her work because she had to go to court several times.
Mhm.
And, you know, they kept citing her for infractions and things like that. And it's like, what's she gonna do? She can't not go to court. You know, something had to give, so.
Yeah. So
It's
I'm,
one that's close to my heart, obviously.
yeah, I'm hoping that we can do that. I've talked to leadership about it, and
Yeah,
I wish I could give you a promise or a guarantee.
yeah,
There's 2 months left. I
yeah.
hope we can.
It's still in one of the committees. I don't
Yeah.
know which one,
Okay, I think labor and workforce. I think
Possibly.
it's that one. I'm not sure, but I know I've had that. I mean, I have had that conversation, so I hope we can. The other one is on campaign finance, which is to say that right now you're restricted for using your campaign funds for childcare. That's the one.
Yep.
Yeah. So you can use campaign funds for all, I can use my campaign funds to park in Boston for a meeting. I can use my campaign funds for all sorts of, as long as you can tie it to, it's related to your service to the public or your political career, you can use it. If somebody wants me to attend a conference, I can use it for the transportation to get there because I did it because of either a political purpose or a government purpose. I bought a table, you know, that, and I put it in the State House, but I can use it in the campaign office too when we have our campaign. But, you know, it's not for personal use. I can do, but I can't use it for childcare because people with young parents, and I don't know why that, I really can't explain why it's the law, but it should change. People with young parents should be able to take the position that I need someone to care for my child so that I can get to this political event because I want to run for office. And so parents of young children are just, there's a disadvantage for them against someone who has older children or no children, or it just doesn't make any sense that this isn't an argument that's been accepted, that this benefits either my political opportunity or even my job to be able to have, you know, it's so many of our expenses that we have, you can see as somewhat personal, I guess, you know, but they're not. They're used because I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't running for office. I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't serving the public. So we really need to be able to look at the primary purpose of the childcare when you're going to a political event because you want to run for office is that, right? And so it's another, because, and you mentioned the reason that your organization is behind it, it's a disparate impact on women. Again, because so many women are saying, I'd love to do it, but I have 2 kids and I have to stay home, you know, to be with them at night and doing it. And there, well, you know, there should be a better balance and we should be able to do that. So I've supported that for several sessions.
I know, it's been on the docket for several sessions, but hasn't gotten through yet.
Yeah, it's one of those things that doesn't make sense. If you can justify it by, this is where I was, I'm not going to the movies. This is where I was.
Yeah.
Why not? It just doesn't make sense. So it's one of the things we should be able to do. So I hope we can, like you said, I hope we can. Anything else on your mind,
Cliff on that.
Cliff?
Yeah, Ken, I actually am on thinking about the programs that you're talking about where, you know, 12 weeks off and all. And I'm looking at it as who's actually going to be paying for these programs.
Huh?
Now, some would say, well, the company would pay for it, but that's still coming out from the consumer because they're not doing it out of their best interest. They're going to have to do it. If the government is paying for it, we're paying for it as individuals because someone's got to fund the government.
Right.
So I'm concerned about all these programs that are being put on the books that is just increasing the taxable rolls that need to be brought in to pay for all of it.
Yeah, so first of all, it's a great question because it's the first question that I asked on this program where we put it together is where do we find the money? Because if you're seeing an increase to your taxes corresponding to a program, then you have the argument that, well, this just did increase my taxes. Unpaid family and medical leave, we're doing it now, so I can explain the way the program works is when you say who's paying it. what we did was we assessed in sort of an insurance type program a cost to the employer primarily, and I'll tell you how it's actually split with the employee. But the cost is it's a formula, but the formula results in a payment of about $4.20 per employee per week. And from that, the employee and the employer split it unless the company is 25 people or less, in which case the employer doesn't have to pay their share. It's a compromise that came out of what we call the grand bargain. So the employer side and the labor side were at the table coming up with that as the number. When I talked to small business about that, and I spent most of my time, and this was about a 4-year process on that program, I asked them about their costs of not having a program like this, because what the program does is it says, okay, if a person takes family or medical leave during that time, this program pays that worker. They're off the books of the employer. The employer then, with the money that it essentially is not paying that worker, can take those funds and pay a replacement person to do that work. It might be they extend some part-timers' hours. It might be they bring in somebody on a temporary basis. That person wouldn't really accrue enough time for unemployment, so they could get a tryout at a job, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I spoke to so many employer groups.
Well,
And
but as a small employer myself, although newly retired, if I had an employee that was out for 3 months, 4
Yeah.
months, let's say, they can't be replaced with a temporary employee who would know what to do. So it really leaves a big hole in either they're not going to be there and you start training someone new, or they've got to be there. So as a small employer, I find that it's really difficult to work with something like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Most small employers, though, told me during the process of passing it, in just that situation you said, that if someone is out for 3 weeks, but they value them, they want them, they're going to have to fire them because they're not big enough of an employer to satisfy the federal FAMLA law. So therefore, there's no job protection, and they fire them and replace them. And then, like you said, they train a new employee. So they recruit someone, they train them. There's an expense to that. It's a very expensive proposition. And so the majority of employers that told me about that situation said, look, it's not perfect, but if I could bring in someone, even an intern, if I could bring in someone to do an entry-level job and promote someone to do that work for a time, train them to do it, it's a less expensive and more efficient situation for me, because at the end of that time, that person who went out, say, with a heart attack for the 3 months that you talked about, is back. I've protected their job, and this program does protect their job. So I didn't lose all that investment I had in that worker, and that was the more. I mean, I appreciate your point of view, and I appreciate everyone doesn't have the same point of view, but that was the story that I got.
And with that said, my company only had 3 or 4 employees, very small, and one person is 25%, makes a big difference to a small company with 20 or 25, different percentages. So I understand different sizes, even though they're all small, can be vastly different.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to companies right here in Bedford, small employers. And I had one conversation I'll never forget. The owner of the business says, I only have 4 employees, but one is my daughter. And I want to be a grandpa. I want to be a grandfather, but I'm really afraid because she's my best employee. And what am I going to do without her? I don't want to replace her, So what am I going to do? And she says, you're telling me that I could just give more time to part-timers just to get through, just to get that work done. If she has a child. In fact, there was a company in Burlington that I think that was a company, another one in Burlington who said that too. He was very skeptical. And he had the same story because these are family businesses. And then his daughter really did have a child. It really happened. And he said, it worked because I was able to get entry-level employees to come, and I bumped up the responsibility of employees up the line. I got through it better that I got through it. And he says, my daughter kept saying, Dad, I need to come back. I need to help. I need to help. And he said, don't worry. I paid into this system so that I didn't have to worry. So you don't have to worry. You don't have to feel guilty. Take the time with my grandchild and, value it and come back. And she
Right.
did.
And thank you very much for talking to the Rotary here and giving us each a chance to, let you know what we think. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate your point of view. As I said, not everyone had the same point of view on the program, and I appreciate yours. But I just want to tell you and the group that I heard another story to the concerns that you raised.
I think promoting that internship as a goal, get you work as an intern, and those opportunities are powerful, and I bet you contributed a lot when you were there.
Yeah, we have in our office, I'm really proud, we have an internship program. It's a little unique because it bothers me that in the State House, we don't have paid internships. Except for certain districts, we can now, just now. And it's appropriate that we should, where the interns may be more struggling than others. But for our district, we don't have paid internships. And so what we do in our office, we'd only take about 4, they've got to be college students, so that I can keep it at 4. Everyone can get their chance as they get older, but they don't do work that anybody gets paid to do, is really my thought. It's because they don't get paid, and that's unfair, because we should pay minimum wage to workers who do work that way. So what we do is we have every intern come up with a project that they want to work on, essentially a paper that they want to work in, identify a program that can be improved, or maybe a program that we need to get rid of, or maybe a new program that we're not doing at all, and they want to advocate for it. And so they take the 2 months of the summer internship to work on that with the access that they have in the State House. And then if it's impressive enough, we'll take that paper and we'll go and present it to the agency that is responsible to deal with that topic and to do it that way. So for that, and then they're able to observe seminars given by public figures and all of that. That's our program. And I say that now because although we're filled for this summer, coming up next summer, if anybody's watching and is in college or knows of someone in college and wants to apply, we're always looking for good, bright interns.
All right. Thank you, Ken. I think that's it.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.